could say time and space is one moment that we're continually experiencing. There is no past, present, or future. But it's more like an expanding, you say the figure eight's why that's a symbol of infinity, or just an ongoing loop. But that's too simple of a way to describe it. But that's kind of how our third dimensional mind would approximate it. And so it's big events out in the future, potential events that we're getting echoes back from. And so the future of humanity and hundreds of billions of potential humans in the future, and that big of a psychic broadcast that they've proven we are broadcasting electrochemically, even in the third dimension, but beyond, that because we are antennae, we are picking up what you would call a future event because it's all in the space-time system resonating. And then if you can pick up those future vibrations, the issue is then you can change those by actions. And the bad guys know this, and that's why they try to manipulate things so they can try to control the future. The minute we understand that, it's not like Oprah's secret where you just believe it and it happens, but there is that potentiality, as Genesis tells us, we're made in the image of God. It can do anything in that process as we learn the secrets of the power of humanity. And so I believe, and we'll talk to Dark Journalist, get his take on this, because he's seen similar things, that Werner von Braun was seeing possible futures and was simply writing down and putting in a fiction format what he was picking up, echoing from the future. And that's how he was able to develop his program. We'll be right back.
You know how everywhere we look, just to add to this video, everywhere we look, there are spirals. And to me, it seems like we are trapped in a death ant spiral. And the reason history keeps repeating itself is because each time, I believe in reincarnation, and because each time we aren't healing from within, we aren't looking inside of us for the answers as to how to advance out of this, we keep looking for outside sources. In the ancient days, we were using the temples and crystals and the frequency and putting that into the water in order to prolong our life. AI, pharmaceuticals, and everything else that we're doing in order to heal and in order to advance our culture, when all the answers and abilities and tools that we need lie within each and every one of us. Currently, I believe that there is a pre-programmed destiny within this time matrix, cyclical, historical loop that we are in. And I say this because if there's destiny and everything is just going to happen by itself, no matter what you do, there's no need for discernment. So why do we need to connect and listen to our intuition in order to discern? It also appears as though we're digressing as we go. Each time we come back, we're repeating the same patterns, the same history in different playouts, but it's almost like it's more post-apocalyptic each time, and we go further and further away from our spiritual divine nature. And it's like time keeps folding back on itself, and that's why people say the past, present, and future are all happening at once, because I believe we're stuck in a death spiral. And we have the ability to see potentialities within the future program on the timeline and change temporary outcomes, but that's not affecting the final outcome. Like a river can take many different pathways, but it all leads to the same ocean. When we do the inner healing, we are actually healing past traumas as well. So it's not like we're just working through current things. We're working through whatever has happened during this lifetime, but also what has happened in past lifetimes. And maybe I believe that we keep reincarnating until we overcome all of these traumas and overcome the duality of this reality that we're living in. Which will heal, again, the past traumas, and collectively we can heal the present, which in turn will heal the future. And that's where our intuition comes in. But that's why it's so scary with these devices programming our subconscious, which is, 95% of what we're operating on a daily basis. And then they're taking they're able to read our minds and transcribe them into the cloud system, which is giving them access to the timeline. So they're able to essentially mess with the timeline. So my question is there an end to this death spiral? Because it seems like we're digressing so much, like that there may be an end, which I didn't think was possible before. But now I'm kind of like, are we getting sucked into a black hole? And we are actually the light that's holding it up. And this is why the entities that are seemingly running the show want to keep us trapped here. And then the other thing is, like, when the controllers view the future, with their programs and stuff like that, I believe they're actually accessing a series of possibilities within the pre-programmed matrix, not the actual future that will lead to heaven on earth or an ascended timeline. And same goes with us. So these are just my thoughts, but this video is really good. So continue to listen.
And we are connected. We're independent individuals, but we are a group collective. The group subconscious is real. That's how the studies are legion, particularly mothers and sons in the universities with the cards, and the mother and the son, some of them can do it almost 100% of the time, guess what the card is. And the Aborigines famously, I'm going to shut up and go to our guests. The Aborigines are very famous in Australia. They'll be 1,000 miles away in a mine. Every time they come out and say, my dad just had a heart attack, my mom just died, they'll put them on a helicopter and fly them to an airbase, and they're always right. They're really connected. And so this is 100% real. And most of you experience it yourself. But some people are more dialed in than others. And that's why ancients built all these sites on ley lines, and then they now can have different devices to pick up the huge energy coming up out of the earth at those points. So we picked this up, and the system knows about it and studies it, but doesn't want you to know about it. So my view on what was happening with Werner von Braun, he was able to futuristically do all of this stuff because he was already theoretically looking into energy, basically bouncing back from what you would call the future. Aldrin came on the show and basically said this. He asked to come on, and then he told me that as well privately. He talked about that. Go ahead.
What was your impression of Buzz, by the way? I've always felt that he has been strongly repressed from telling the things that he wants to, but he did let out that whole thing about 2001 Space Oddity, that there was an obelisk on Phobos, and that's where they got the inspiration.
Yeah, that's what he said on air. I mean, his secretary said, oh, he's a big fan, he wants to come on, contacted me like 14 years ago, whenever that interview was, and then later she said, oh, we really love you, but he got in trouble for the things he said, he can't come back on right now. And then later out in Los Angeles, I talked to him, and he was telling me, and you can't make this up, Charlie Sheen, about, we found water when we were there, and in a couple of years, the Indians are going to crash a satellite into it. We'll have another satellite that's there with it that picks up the water, and we're going to let them make the announcement. Then a few years later, I was in an airport and saw the announcement as he said.
That is fascinating. Can you imagine the amount of things that they know and had to keep quiet about? This is interesting also, I think, when you get into it, because there was so much about where the lunar missions faked and all the rest of it. I think one of the reasons that those rumors got started in the first place is because they didn't give us the real track of what was going on there. Because, of course, as advanced as the Russians are, they never went to the moon, landed somebody, and brought them back. So there's some other technology involved there. That is the X technology that they used. And that technology was hinted at when we get into Thomas Townsend Brown, who's a very advanced black ops scientist for the United States government, was involved in everything from the Philadelphia experiment to the moon program. He also started NICAP, which was the UFO group that really got things off the ground, and he wanted to integrate all that into the public. He's part of this share mentality. There's a number of groups inside this larger national security state who want to really protect the information. That's the X-Protect group. And then you have this group that wants to share it and move the culture forward. Well, he was certainly one of those. So what we got later was a mythos about this looking glass technology where they could peer into the future and use it and utilize events that were coming up to their own, kind of advantage on the inside. But the actual project was called the acoustic fan. And that was the predictive organ that he found. And what happened was Braun, when he went to private school, he went to the same private school in Pennsylvania as President Trump did, just much earlier. And he had this experience where an orb floated over a river and then came at him full force, and his horse freaked out and he blacked out. But he saw his entire history before him. So he was able to look into his entire future and see what was going to happen, not only for him, but for the world. So he spent over 40 years developing technology to do that, where he could just put that out there for people. And he demonstrated it in the basement of the RAND, a corporation defense contractor, and then the whole project disappeared. And his daughter gave me the entire story on that. But the thrust is, the predictive element is twofold. It is retrocognitive, that is, they can see into the past through the Akashic record, and then looking into the future, there's a lot of free will that's involved, but there's also a pattern that's laid down. I like to intersperse the science part with the mystery school information. And if you look at some of the work of Edgar Cayce, who could do these readings and could really go into the past and into the future, one of the things that he said when they asked him about the Great Pyramid and were there predictions in the Great Pyramid, one of the things that he said in relation to this was, yes, and they can be very specific down to the name and street address of the person in history who was going to do this and that. So imagine that level of detail in a monolith that he claimed was built over 10,000 years ago.
And by the way, that's what Buzz Aldrin said. He said the answers to get to Mars and the monolith on Mars' lone moon is in the Great Pyramid, and people can find the interview. And then just expanding on that, if you read Ezekiel and other parts of the Bible, when the prophets have the vision, a craft comes down, and then a being comes out with descriptions like a glass bubble over their head, and then just being in proximity to them, they fall down and start having the vision, which is what you were describing that the Pentagon has, that when they're around these interdimensional devices that fold space, that then people start having these extreme visions or psychic experiences.
It's fascinating because Curtis LeMay, who's famously in our nuclear program, part of SAC and Joint Chiefs and all that during the Kennedy and Johnson era, and the ultimate hawk, when he saw this machine demonstrated, he had to be alone for 3 days afterwards. And so he was totally miscombobulated. And it's interesting, when you hear these stories, also the famous story about Nixon showing Jackie Gleason these aliens who were in this Florida air base and, showing him this is what we found, and sort of showing off. And there's a Secret Service record of Nixon taking off and doing this. His wife, Gleason's ex-wife, said for 3 weeks he couldn't eat. So there's some interaction with these things that sort of scrambles the mind, body, etheric, psychospiritual aspect of the person, and they come back different. So even if you're a general trying to use this for some kind of, war advantage or whatever it happens to be, somebody like LeMay, when he gets in front of it, he is also disassembled. So the nature of the technology and the experience you're talking about, the people have to be prepared on a spiritual level, on a psychic level for the experience. That's why in NASA they seek out psychic and telepathy training. They try to go.
Well, I was told by a high-level Microsoft executive 20 years ago that I knew was a major Hollywood producer. I'll leave it at that. He was really a Microsoft executive making major movies. That's really what NASA was just a cover for a psychic program.
Yes. See, there's a huge aspect in it because, of course, if you have von Braun running it and he is hiring our main scientists in order to do this, then you're taking it into a place of, they're utilizing this. When it's very interesting, in general, and I can appreciate it, but in society, I don't think we understand psychic activity, psychokinetic activity. The Russians were way ahead of us on this. They had programs where people could move things, and that was back in the 50s and 60s. They could move objects with their minds. So that's already on record that they have psychic warriors. And the reason we kicked in so hardcore with the financing of our own remote viewing program was because we knew theirs was so advanced. And that program, in fact, the Psychic Spies program on the record, the one that we have that's declassified, there's many more. This is just the superficial. But there were major things where they saved hostages in State Department situations. They got their own analysts out, They got their own diplomats out of shady situations where they were being held hostage using remote viewers, guys like Joe McMoneagle and Pat Price and others. So I think we need to view now, we can go on a totally different level with this, but let's bring it back around to the Elon Musk idea, because Musk, I can guarantee you that Musk is very aware of this. So when he put that post out on X recently, it's quite interesting because he and his family and all the rest are very, very aware of that prediction. And he's coming up and saying, how could this be possible even? Well, that's a new openness on his part.
Yeah, he's obviously now ready to trigger that debate.
Yes. No question.
And what do you make of his joke that he's a 5,000-year time traveler? Because you can actually time travel psychically, not actually be the classic thing people think of.
What do you think of that when he says that? He likes to go back to that.
I mean, you know, all I know is I have experiences that I've shared that are on record, and a lot of them previously when I wouldn't do it, where, you know, I say, all right, well, and I feel it from outside of me, and I get told to say something, and you know, the fact is, when it happens, though, I've got to go ahead and just make myself do it. I did it on election night. I said Trump will announce he's the winner and come out on stage at 127. He came out exactly and did what I said, and that was just like, but like, really do that? It's like, yeah, do that, and it's real and it happened. I don't say it a lot. You know, miss sometimes. I never miss because it's not me. And when I really had these super exciting experiences looking in the future, I get really discombobulated. We'll be right back.